Evening, everybody in Hong Kong, Singapore, and in Asia as a whole. Welcome if you're viewing from here in the UK this afternoon, and Europe and the US. We've got a lot of people on the line for this webinar concerning the Golden Visa, effectively the last chance for the Golden Visa. So we look to bring that good news. And it's a pleasure to have Tirso Olazabal from ME Lawyers on the webinar with me again today. Tirso, welcome. How are you? Very nice to see you.
Hi, Grant. Thank you very much for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be here as well. I'm very good. How about you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. It's starting to warm up here in the UK, so that's pleasing.
Okay.
Finally looking to get some summer on the way, hopefully. But yeah, all fine, thanks. And yeah, really good to see you. I know that we have a lot of people on the webinar today, and as I say, it's really because of the subject matter relating to the Golden Visa and the fact that obviously we have now a form of clarity with regard to what is happening, and therefore there's a number of people on the webinar who are keen to understand about moving forward now. Number who have very, very keen to get this update and what is the last chance for probably the best program for citizenship in Europe. So it's good to have you on as an expert in the field of Golden Visa, and have been doing Golden Visa for many, many years now as part of your other work with ME Lawyers, Tirso.
Yeah, correct. So we've been working with the Golden Visa for quite some time now, and it's a pleasure to be here and to share my experience as well as the recent news about the program.
Fantastic. Okay, so what we'll do, let's get into the first slide. And what I'm going to do first of all, before I hand over to Tirso for the update, is I'm just going to give a little bit of background to IP Global, because there's a lot of people on the webinar today who are not familiar with the business. There's a lot of new attendees, which is wonderful. So first of all, a bit of background to myself. I've been with IP Global for 16 years now, predominantly in Hong Kong and Singapore. I relocated to the UK last year. I trip out to Asia regularly though. In terms of the business, we've got about 80 people globally within the business. We have transacted on over 5,700 properties now, over $3 billion of property investment across 18 countries. And therefore we have tremendous experience in the asset class of property. So if we go into the next slide, and just give a little bit of background to where have we predominantly invested. So I mentioned that it's effectively across 18 countries that we've invested in, and we've just highlighted 4 of the main markets here. So Australia and the US, where we've transacted since 2011 and 2013 respectively, and most recently, and our current markets alongside Portugal, are Germany, where we've invested since 2014, and the UK, where we've done over 100 projects, transacted over 1.7 billion GBP of property business since 2009. Next slide, please. Okay, so the business model is very much that we co-invest with our clients where possible. We actually, once the client has invested, we can manage the end-to-end buying process. So that goes for introduction to lawyers. We can assist on the acquisition of the mortgage, so the investor doesn't have to go bank to bank to find their own mortgage. We can assist with lettings and management and resales as well. So as I mentioned, we have 5,700 properties that we manage. And as I say, we have our own lettings and management business to facilitate that process. Next slide, please. So alongside the IP global business model, where effectively the client is investing in an individual property, of which we have helped clients on the golden visa side and have those schemes available, we also have IP investment management, IPIM for short, which is part of the IP global business. It's regulated under the SFC in Hong Kong. It's regulated under the MAS in Singapore. It is a regulated platform making institutional quality real estate more accessible to individual investors, whereby they've transacted over £600 million worth of real estate transactions, with a strong focus across key sectors of UK student accommodation, build to rent and multifamily property. In terms of markets, the geographical focus has been UK, US and Europe, including Portugal, where we have investment too. So in terms of entry to exit, that business manages the whole process from beginning to end, and also has invested options for the golden visa. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to hand over to Tirso Olazabal from MDME Lawyers. They have offices in Lisbon, also in Hong Kong and Macau. Tirso is the coordinator of MDME's Golden Visa program, where he's managed an experienced team since 2012. And at this point, I'll hand over to Tirso so that he can actually provide the very latest information on the Golden Visa, which is of interest to so many of you on the webinar today. So Tirso, at this point, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grant. So thank you very much to all the audience tonight. As just mentioned by Grant, I'm the head of our private client practice here at MDME Law Firm. We handle, among others, Golden Visa applications since very much its creation in 2012. We've been assisting clients from all over the world in their application. We are now in a different stage of the Golden Visa. As you know, and as you may be aware, the government has recently announced the termination of the program after its creation in 2012. And tonight we are going to talk and to have a brief overview about the main changes about this recent news regarding the termination of the Golden Visa. So maybe we can pass to the next slide. So this is an image of our Prime Minister, Mr. Antonio Costa, when he announced, he was the one announcing that the Golden Visa was going to get to an end a few months ago, and he finally formally announced it a few weeks ago when he presented the final draft law to the Parliament that is going to terminate this program. So the final draft law is still to be voted and approved at the Parliament level, and it is expected to happen by the end of this month. So this is the main, let's say, news that we have, is that the program is going to be terminated, but until it is terminated, we have some sort of a window that is still acceptable for applications to be filed. So I'll pass to the next slide, please. In this draft law that was presented to the Parliament and that is to be voted by the end of the month, it was guaranteed that there was no retroactivity, which means that the government is not going to backdate this new law, in the sense that all the applications that were submitted or are to be submitted until the law effectively comes into force will be valid and accepted. At the very first stage, they thought about backdating the law to the 16th of February 2023, but that was dropped. And now they have decided that applications that are submitted until the law comes effectively into force will be valid and accepted. So until then, there is still a window for applications to be filed, and depending on the investors' appetite, we've been doing it even today. So there is still this possibility of getting this final window of submitting applications to the Golden Visa. This was, in fact, some good news from the first draft that was made available to the public. So there is no retroactivity, and investors that are able to submit their application now and until the law comes into force will still be under the umbrella of the Golden Visa program. Maybe we can pass to the next slide, please. So as I just mentioned, all applications already approved. Okay, so because we have investors in many circumstances, so investors that are already approved, that have already submitted their application and are still under approval, or clients or investors that have not submitted their application yet. So in all these three scenarios, and the new law will not affect them. Okay. What we know is that the government has the idea to convert, or maybe the best explanation for this would be to rename the Golden Visas into D2 visas, which are entrepreneur visas that already exist. This D2 visa has certain specificities that will not be applicable to the Golden Visa holders. One of it, and one of the most important, and that made this program so successful among all the other programs for European passports, is that Golden Visa applicants will still benefit from the exception of a minimum stay of 7 days per year in Portugal. So they will not be under the minimum stay of a 6-month period, like it will be, for example, for other visas like D2, D7, and other visas that we still have in Portugal, and like many other European programs of visa on investment that require clients to stay there 6 months. So Golden Visa applicants will still be under this exceptional measure of a minimum stay of 7 days per year. We can pass to the next slide. So one of the most well, maybe important questions that everyone might be thinking at the moment is, okay, I haven't done my application yet. I'm still interested in doing so, and I just mentioned that it can be done, and it still will be valid and accepted until the new law comes into force. So when is the new law coming into force? So this new law, as I just mentioned, is expected to be voted and discussed at the Parliament level. Okay, so this might happen by the end of the month and early June. Okay, and several things can happen here. Okay, so under the discussions that you will have at the Parliament, the government and the deputies of Portugal may agree on having a transition period to be granted. Okay, so to extend this beyond the entering into force of the law. A law comes into force normally the day after it is published. Okay, so a transition period can be given beyond this entering into force, so maybe 3 months, maybe until the end of the year. Okay, And we can also have the option or the possibility of the discussions that are going to start by the end of the month, that they will require several sessions for this to be completed. As you know, or you may know, the Golden Visa law, or this new draft law, is quite complex and comprises several aspects that are not only related to Golden Visa, but to other housing measures in Portugal. So it might be very well the case that the government decides that, and the discussion needs to be postponed and extended to other several sessions at the Parliament. It is also expected that during those discussions, they may maintain other types of investment that might be eligible for Golden Visa, as renamed D2 visa after the new law comes into force, related to culture and arts. So this is basically the status at the moment. So at the moment, what we have is a current law. So the current law that we had since 2012, as amended from time to time. And until this new law comes into force, applications are still valid and accepted. And the law might come into force if everything goes smoothly, and imagine that they vote everything at the Parliament level by the end of the month. Then the law needs to be sent to the President of the Republic of Portugal for his ratification and approval. And if he has no doubts whatsoever, and he also agrees with the draft law, then he will send it for publication. And after publication, the new law will come into force. We are talking maybe about a window of 45 days in the worst case scenario, okay? In the case that everything goes smoothly, they don't need extra sessions to discuss this matter, and nothing against the law is raised, because it might be the case also that when the law is sent to the President of the Republic for his ratification, it might raise issues to him that he might want to assess in a better way, and that assessment normally also takes some time. So this is something that might also extend the period of the law coming into force. I think that was the last slide, okay, because the idea is for us to now go into a Q&A session, right, into more practical aspects that the audience might have, and also you, Grant, as the one leading the webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Tirso. I was just sort of referring down to my notes here and questions as you were speaking, because obviously, you know, what you've provided there in that you know, excellent concise overview of the current position for Golden Visa has prompted a number of questions. So, you know, perhaps we you know, get into those questions, because obviously that's really the key part, and this is kind of you know, what people are really focusing on here. So the first question we've got is, you know, you mentioned the D2 visa on there, which in effect, is there any differences in terms of what people are going to get for the Golden Visa? So when it mentions the D2 visa, is that anything to be sort of worried about in terms of the application going in now, or any changes that you potentially see, or concerns with the D2 visa?
Okay, so this is a good question. So what we know at the moment is that the conversion of the Golden Visa into a D2 visa will not be a full conversion. It will be a sort of more like a renaming of the visa, rather than a full conversion of the Golden Visa into a D2 visa. And that can be seen because the government has already said that the minimum period of stay will still remain as 7 days, as opposed to the 183 days that is applicable to a D2 visa. So we can expect that this would be more like a renaming rather than a full integration of the Golden Visa into a D2. Okay. Of course, we will have certainly more details when this is discussed at Parliament level, but the idea that is given is that the main features and benefits of the Golden Visa that made these programs so successful will still be in place after the new law comes into force, regardless of it being renamed as a D2.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's very clear. Question here. Actually, this one's for me. What other investments can be made apart from property? Well, okay. So yeah. So just to recap for people. So for property, if it's a building 30 years older or more, in certain locations outside of Lisbon and Porto, you can invest from 280,000 euros, typically low density areas as they are called. For commercial assets, you can still invest in Lisbon and Porto from 350,000 euros. And also, you have a fund option as well. You can invest in funds. You can invest in funds from 500,000 euros. We can't share specific details on this webinar, but suffice to say, IP Investment Management, which is part of IP Global, has a fund eligible for Golden Visa. And as I say, if you'd like to have an initial conversation about that, do drop me a line, and I can obviously engage in a conversation to further discuss. Tirso, just to sort of round that off, I don't know if you want us to share the other routes for Golden Visa, just so as people are aware of all options.
Sure. Well, there are several other ways to get the Golden Visa, but I would say that the main ones and the ones that are more used throughout the years were the property investment and the fund investment. You have also the possibility of creating a company in Portugal that will then employ people as well. You have also the option of making some sort of, it's not an investment, but more like sort of a donation in cultural and art programs that the Portuguese government has in place. You are also able to do it through capital transfer into a Portuguese bank account into a minimum of 1.5 million euros. So I would say that these are the main routes of investments, but of course the preferred ones were the ones that we were just mentioning right now, the funds and the property.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what's interesting is there are a number of partners who are aware obviously of these deadlines, and actually they are sort of caveating their services from the point of view of protecting the investor if there are delays, or if actually it's not possible to get their Golden Visa in time. They are within the contracts prepared to refund initial booking fees and actually refund the payments for the property. And that would all be documented within the contract if there is not time to get the Golden Visa. And obviously that is something that if the investor was to get into that type of deal, then obviously Tirso could review that contract to make sure the investor is fully protected before they move forward. So just on to the next question. And actually this is a question that has come up actually time and time again during the webinar. It's effectively, when we look at the timeline there that you've outlined, Tirso, what is the likelihood of that timeline being met? And there's a lot of people who are basically saying, well, because we're coming up to the summer, because there's a lot of parliamentary business to get through, because of potential objections, because of the fact that a number of people have seen in Lisbon and Porto, when people were stopped from investing in Lisbon and Porto in residential property a couple of years ago, it actually took quite some time before those measures were implemented. You know, is there a reasonable chance that actually, you know, this deadline could be pushed out further? Now, I think that what people are getting at is, you know, actually the sort of deadline is quite short at the moment, but obviously if there's a possible chance it may be pushed out, then that's actually going to give them more time to get all their documentation together and give them a greater chance to actually get to the point where they will achieve their golden visa.
Sure. So from a conservative perspective, as I just mentioned before, that might happen within 1 month and a half. Okay, but this is a conservative approach, and well, going back to your to the point of your question, it can absolutely be the case that while discussing this at the Parliament level, that they agree in granting a transition period to this new law coming into force, and this will of course give more time for the applicants to file their applications. Okay, why this might be the case? One, because it happened in the past, as you just mentioned, in 2021, when the government restricted residential investment in the main cities of Portugal due to housing issues. There was a transition period granted by the government of 1 year. Okay, so if we do a parallel with what happened in the past, this might also be the case now, maybe not 1 year, but a few months or until the end of the year. So that's absolutely possible from a perspective of what we experienced in the past, but also of reasonability, because it would be reasonable for the government to approve that measure, given that the golden visa entails investment, which also entails reviewing of documents. Investors need to collect some personal documents that they need for the application, and this also takes some time. So for these two reasons, I would say that it would be, of course, perfectly possible to see that after discussing this at the Parliament, we will have a transition period longer than the law coming into force after it is published.
Okay, all right, that's a good answer, Tirso. Okay, another question here, and it kind of, there was a question about the D2 earlier, but I'll read this full one out for you. It says a golden visa was for 5 years residency initially, and thereafter offered the option to apply for a citizenship. Does the D2 work in the same way, or is it a shorter tenure with an option to renew? So it's a kind of a similar question. Is there any sort of differences in the program of sort of, you know, 7 days per annum for the 5-year period, etc., that you see with the D2 visa? So
if I understand the question, okay, so we are looking at seeing if the D2 visa will also give the same possibility of having the citizenship after 5 years, like the golden visa, right?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Is it a shorter period? It's exactly the same. Okay. So this is a matter of citizenship law. Okay. People need to make a difference between the golden visa law, let's call it like this, and the citizenship law. What is changing at the moment is the golden visa law, not the citizenship law. The citizenship law states that someone that holds a residency visa for 5 years is entitled to apply for Portuguese citizenship. Okay, so this is applicable for a D2, for a golden visa, for a D7, for a nomad digital visa, for any residency visa in Portugal. Okay, so everything, the rule applies the same to all. Okay, in terms of renewal, it's basically the same. The golden visa is renewed every 2 years, and a D2 visa is renewed the first time after 2 years, and the second time and subsequently after 3 years.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's excellent. I think that gives good clarity there, Tirso. Another question here. In fact, I'll answer this one. IPIM offers a real estate option, which I believe is an in-house fund. Does IPIM have funds by other companies that one can avail of? I think just in summary, what I would say is, so IP Investment Management is a separately regulated company under the SFC. It's effectively ground upwards developments in various asset classes. It's basically, the model is all the way from finding pieces of land, project management from ground upwards of commercial assets, getting planning permission, financing, building, leasing, ultimately selling those assets to institutional investors. So it's a commercial asset. And as I say, it's an asset that has opportunity to invest into the golden visa opportunity at a level of 500,000 euros. Again, it's not something we can specifically share details of on the webinar, but again, if you'd like to understand more about that, please drop me a line after the webinar, and then obviously I can have a one-to-one conversation with regard to that part of our business for investing into fund, for example, for the golden visa. There's another question here. Okay, so this has come up for a lot of people. So people are seeing that there is an opportunity for the golden visa at this point, given that we have some clarity. Obviously, there's a relatively short window of time, but the urgency is definitely creating many questions in terms of what next, Tirso. So I think if I ask this question to you, it covers quite a lot of the questions. If I was keen to move forward now, in effect, you know, process, what is the process? Lots of people are asking, what are the costs involved to get the application underway? Now, I know obviously if people are interested in costs, that's more of a one-to-one, and obviously if you are keen to get quotation, you know, do drop me a line and I can connect you with Tirso. But Tirso, yeah, if you for the many people who are asking, you know, I'm interested, I appreciate this is a last chance, you know, what is the process now? If you want to maybe just give an outline of that so that obviously people can have a good understanding of what documents are required, etc. Yeah.
So focusing on the process, okay, I would say that you have two main parts. The first one is the investment. This is a visa on investment, so you need to find your investment and you need to complete your investment. Okay, so you really need to make your investment. So this part is a question of the investor finding whatever investment he's comfortable with, and us reviewing and making a due diligence on that investment in terms of assessing whether it is valid for a golden visa application or not, and then completing the investment, which can be done depending on the investment through a Portuguese bank account that must be set up by the applicant or not. Okay, this will depend on the type of investment. So we have here also the possibility of the investor having to open a bank account. That is something also that might take some time. Okay, and then we have the other part, which is collecting personal documents from the investor, which are mainly criminal record, and if the main applicant wants to reunify family, then marriage certificates or birth certificates, and that's basically it in terms of the process. Okay, completing the investment while the investment is under completion, gathering the personal documents, and then filing the application. The application is filed. It's an online application. Once it is filed, it is then reviewed by the authorities after a few months. Once that is done and approved, then the investor will be requested to go to Portugal to make an interview with the immigration authorities. Okay, at that moment we will have people in our Lisbon office to go with the investor to that meeting, and after that it's a matter of waiting for the visa to be issued. So that's it in terms of the process.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Tirso. Actually, another question here. The next question is, can you just summarize once more just the benefits of the golden visa? And can I link, if I pursue the golden visa, can I link my other family members to the visa? So maybe that's just a chance just to give a quick sort of 1 or 2 minute overview of the benefits of the golden visa once again, Tirso.
So basically, the golden visa offers well, several benefits. One of them is of course the possibility of doing family reunification under the same investment of the main applicant, and this applies to wife or husband, kids, and parents if they are dependents as well. And then all the other benefits will be the fact that you are entitled to freely travel within the Schengen area among 26 European countries. You are entitled after 5 years to apply for Portuguese citizenship, which is one of the most powerful European passports that you can have. And the other benefit is, while you have the golden visa, you can work and live in Portugal freely. You have access to healthcare and schools in Portugal. And I would say that it's not a benefit per se, but one of the main things of the Portuguese golden visa when compared to other programs is that the investor is only required to stay in Portugal for 7 days a year, which is very flexible option and very unique in the market.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you make there. I mean, so many schemes have been where you've actually have to reside in the country to ultimately get to citizenship passport. You know, Portugal is 7 days per year. And, you know, obviously over and above that, as we know, it's a fantastic country, you know, low crime, friendly people, rule of law is excellent, great weather, and so many benefits that we could go on with, Tirso. But yeah, that question has come up actually from a lot of people, actually even commenting on the fact that, you know, from their own individual research, that the golden visa is and the benefits it has is you know, pretty much the best scheme in Europe. We've got one final question here, and then I think we will draw to a close because we like to keep these webinars to around about 45 minutes. Do you need to transfer the full 250, 500,000 for a fund investment in order to make the application, or just allocate but not transfer? Okay, so I can answer that, and then Tirso, you know, please feel free to add any comments. So in effect, if you are wanting to proceed, you choose your investment choice, you start the legal process ASAP, and as Tirso mentioned, you collate the documents that he would require to file your application. Obviously, once you've decided on your investment, be it the fund, be it the property route, for example, once your bank account is opened, you have your tax number for Portugal, you have your power of attorney, you would transfer the funds to your Portuguese bank account. If it was a fund, for example, there would be a capital call at that point for the fund. And then at that point, obviously, your once you've transferred funds, your application goes in. As I say, it has to be a cash-based investment. It cannot be a mortgage in any part of the investment if it's sort of 280, 350,000 euros or 500,000 euros for the fund. Tirso, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you were on the point. Okay, so
Okay. Well, that's all the questions here. I think you know, I'll ask for sort of closing thoughts from yourself in a second, Tirso, but I think the most important thing is, you know, there is a window of opportunity now. Obviously, it wasn't clear a couple of months ago. It's kind of clear now that it's just a case of getting on with your application if you are keen on the golden visa as soon as possible, because once the scheme is finished, it's finished. So it's important to proceed as quickly as you can. In order to help you, what I would say to you is, if you require further information on the investment options, please drop me a line. If you'd like to be connected with Tirso, you know, please drop me a line and I can connect you with him so that you can have an individual conversation based on your own particular circumstance. And as I say, Tirso will be able to facilitate that process, share how it affects your family and family members, and obviously the costs involved. And as I say, has tremendous experience over the past 10 years or so of helping many people achieve the golden visa. So certainly see this as a last chance opportunity to achieve the golden visa. Tirso, I don't know if you want to add anything else in closing remarks at this point.
No, I think we've touched all the points, and I think that everyone got the idea that time is of essence at the moment, and that's basically it. Thank you very much for inviting me and to join this webinar tonight. I hope that the audience liked and it was helpful for everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tirso. I mean, your input as always is invaluable, and you know, thanks for attending the webinar. You know, what was very short notice. We wanted to do the webinar quickly so that we could provide the information to a lot of the investors who are keen to understand the latest. So all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for everyone who's attended today. There are more questions coming through. We will get back to those questions. If you would like further information, if you'd like to speak to Tirso, do drop me a line and I will connect you with Tirso, and I will provide whatever information you require also on the options to invest. But certainly, as I say, it's a time not to delay now. It's a time to progress. So, you know, do drop me a line and we will help with all the information that you require. So all that remains for me to say is thank you for everyone for attending. Tirso, thanks for joining. I wish you a good evening and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Brent. Likewise. See you and have a good evening.